Medoff's chapter helps us think about some of the very practical problems that if Herzl and Ahad are developing ideologies, that Madoff thinks about some of the things that are happening on the ground, and in particular, he's thinking about how that's connected to the United States, to Jewish Americans, and what they thought was going on in Palestine. So when the pieces that we have from Herzl and from Ahad are from the late 19th and early 20th century. So at that period of time, Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire, a Muslim empire. During World War I, the British Empire gained control of Palestine and created a mandate. And so part of what we see happening in what Madoff is describing is a question of what should be done with the mandate, what should be done with the future. So a really guiding principle for a lot of people for the idea of a Jewish homeland was the really famous idea from Woodrow Wilson of self-determination, that President Wilson thought that one way to sort of resolve what had caused World War I and in general create world peace would be that whatever geographic location we're talking about, whatever is the majority population there, it should be their state. They should run the state. And so the question of Palestine is one really good way of looking at how that policy was deeply problematic. That the reality is nowhere has a homogenous population, that in fact there are almost always many different ethnicities, many different kinds of people living in a place. So self-determination will disenfranchise those people who are not a part of the majority, and that majority rule isn't necessarily just. So with the case of Palestine, there's even another problem, that people who are really maybe dedicated to the idea of self-determination as a kind of hopeful way to resolve some of the issues that led to World War I and followed it. Self-determination was a problem for a Jewish state in the land of Israel because Jews were not actually the majority population. So Madoff describes an official American kind of strategy for dealing with this, which is to advocate for delayed democracy. That American activists said basically there should be democracy in Palestine, but that Palestine wasn't ready for it. They're kind of vague about what would make a place become ready for democracy, or what would make a place, more importantly, not ready for a democracy. The issue is that Arabs, or Palestinian Arabs, form the vast majority of the population in the land of Palestine. So these people on the one hand advocated self-determination, but on the other wanted to create a Jewish state in a place where Jews were not the majority. So delayed democracy, what it really effectively does, is attempt to wait until there's enough Jewish immigration into the land of Palestine and then declare, okay, let's have self-determination here, and Jews are the largest number. So it was a strategy for kind of working around the reality that there are hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs living in the land that more and more Jews are beginning to think about. I think it's really important too, though, to note that most Jews in the world opposed Zionism. You know, Herzl even talks about not expecting everyone to agree with him. That Jews in the United States, many of them basically just thought it should be a civic democracy, a liberal democracy like the U.S., where at least theoretically. No ethnicity has greater privileges than others, and that basically everyone is just, because of shared values, a part of the nation. Um, and that would last until not just after the Holocaust, because even after the Holocaust, many Jewish Americans thought that Jewish survivors should return to the countries they were from and simply be integrated there. And that didn't pan out. That they they were trapped in displaced person camps. In some cases, people did try to go back to the places they were from in Eastern Europe, but more pogroms and violence broke out. And so they had to return to DP camps, displaced person camps. And so there was, it really, that's what convinced Jewish Americans in large part to decide to support the creation of a Jewish state, starting in 1946 or 1947, that more and more Jewish Americans supported the idea of the state of Israel as a Jewish state. So basically what we see then is this issue happening all over the world in the 20th century, where people are thinking in terms of nationalism, but nationalism doesn't really map onto the way that people live. That people live in multi-ethnic, multi-religious communities everywhere. And so the idea that one territory and one nation are linked creates all kinds of problems. And so we see that begin to play out in what Madoff discusses.